Hello, how's everybody doing? Well, hold on a minute. I know it's morning. Did you guys forget your coffees? You did? Okay. Can you pretend you had a coffee? Can we just imagine it? We just take a moment and just channel our inner coffee. Can we do that? Because you're in for a really interesting session. We're here at ChangeNOW to change the world, right? And I think that requires a little bit of enthusiasm. Have you got it in you? Oh, we're getting there. You've not had a moderator like me before, have you? One that's like, let's have a chit chat. Is everybody awake? Are you ready to go? You're like, I thought I was just sitting here to listen about plastic-free solutions. You are. But we can do that with a little bit of vibrancy. We need a bit of passion, don't we? So let's try that again. Good morning. How are you doing? Okay, I can get ready today. My name's Lovelda Vincenzi. I'm going to be your moderator for this session. If you haven't already guessed, I'm a little bit wacky, but that means we're going to have a good amount of fun here. Plastic, as we know, poses a critical problem to environmental challenge for us. It's contributing to widespread pollutions in our oceans, our rivers, and all of our ecosystems. And we often talk about alternative solutions to plastic. But in this session, we're going to explore, what if we took a much more radical approach? What if we were to, wait for it, eradicate plastic? Ready for that discussion? Some of you are. Some of you are still waking up. I'm going to have to find out where the coffee is so I can let you know in the break. We'll be kicking off this session with our first speaker, who is a free diver, film director, choreographer, underwater dancer, and storyteller. Give me an woo! Bet you haven't had that combination before. Very different. She uses her art for good, and we'll be starting by having a look at one of her latest films called Bachelet. Our speaker is going to be Julie Gautier, but first, let's take a quick look at the film.
L'association civile premier traité international contre la pollution plastique au Kenya, les citoyens du contre cette bombe toxique à retardement, comme l'appellent de nombreux
Can I just stand a little bit to explain?
I was going to say, please explain. For whatever reason, we've had a few challenges with the display of the film. So I'd love for you to give a good
It's the stop-motion version of the movie. So I hope you're curious now, and you can watch it on live on, not live, but on internet, fluid movie. So yes, it's online and it's for free and it's for everyone, and it's really to talk about plastic pollution and yes.
So, Julie, do you want to tell us a little bit about the film that we caught snippets of? You know, we were using our imagination in between, so perhaps you can tell us where the inspiration came from, how you came to be doing the film.
Yes, I used to do many movies under the water, and more I got more involved into education and ecology. And this one was the one I really wanted to dedicate to plastic pollution. Mm-hmm. So I had this idea of a giant monster made of plastic. And then I created the entire story with the little kind of mermaid, human mermaid walking around. And bakelite is the ancient name of the plastic. It's the first plastic that had been made in a really big amount. It really tells the story about our relationship to plastic that first was amazing. I mean, plastic was fantastic at that time.
It was revolutionary.
Yeah. Yes.
Everybody wanted a bit of it.
Exactly. But, so that's why at first, when the mermaid discovered the giant, she's like a little bit amazed and she starts dancing with it. But the more she dances, the more she interacts with it, the more it grows. Mm-hmm. And growing over and over, it becomes dangerous, and it just kind of killed her. And at the end, surprise, but you're so lucky you didn't see it today, so you can have a watch on internet, and you'll see the ending. It's a good ending.
I mean, it almost. I watched the whole short film. It's on YouTube, available for you to watch. I strongly recommend you watch it with headphones for the full effect. It is so moving and touching. How did you come to be doing storytelling underwater? It's not a place that we normally, we watch films about the planet and moving forward and what we could be doing to save the planet. Very rarely is it set underwater at all. So how did you even come to start in this arena?
So I was born on Reunion Island, so surrounded by water, and my father was an underwater fisherman, so spear fisherman. So I used to spend a lot of time in the water, and my mother was a dancer. So at some point, when someone gave me a camera, I started to film underwater, and then I started dancing underwater, and I made film about movement underwater.
So how did you come to do something around... because you could be doing lots of different films, and you have done lots of different films, music videos, those sorts of things. How did you come to be in the arena of climate change? When I first started, I did this first movie. I never held a camera in my life before. It's called Freefall, and it became like very famous worldwide. It was a huge buzz on the internet, and was like, whoa, that's interesting. This is what I can do with my bracelet now. Stopped competing and started making movies. So at first I was doing only like beautiful stories under the water, and the more I was getting attention and the more I could see that had an impact on people, I decided, oh wow, no, I need to dedicate my talent to save and protect what I love, so the ocean. I love that you've kind of seen that now you've got attention, it's a platform, and what you do with that platform helps to change the narrative. As somebody who literally immerses themselves in the underwater world, you have a very, very unique connection with the water. How has this connection influenced your thoughts around the urgency for us to look for plastic-free solutions?
How? Just witnessing also, everything I can see in the water, all the big mammals I can encounter there, and the magic of this element really pushes me to want to protect it. And it's because water is my element, but it's a worldwide problem. So I took the water as my main goal to protect, but it's just a global thing.
How did you, looking beyond film, what do you think the role of art is in, because we don't normally talk about it. We have lots of stages at ChangeNOW. We've got art is kind of integrated into a lot of the stuff that we're doing here at ChangeNOW. But it's not necessarily the first thing people think about when they think about driving climate change. We think science, we think new solutions, we think legislations, but we don't normally think art or any sort of art form. What do you think the role of art is in driving climate change and helping us to save the planet?
So I have no solution to give. It's not my specialty, but there's so many people and so many people here that are doing something, that are acting and giving solutions to the problem. So my talent is to make beautiful images, to create emotion, and then to attract attention. And this is what art do. Go from the brain to the head to the heart. And then when the heart is open, you can give the room for solution. We are ready for this. We need to be touched. I think this is the greatest power of art, is to touch.
I love that you say that, because I think historically what we've done is we've used science, we've used logic. You know, we'll tell people there's a problem. We'll scare them by showing them terrible images of what's happening with plastic. We'll talk to their logic. What you're saying is actually we need to talk to their hearts. So what do you think, how do you think art and science should be maybe working closer together so that we can translate the scientific messages in a way that connects to the hearts and souls of people?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes we're not all made to have scientific thoughts, and we are not. Some people are not keen of numbers, and so I'm just here to give a little breath to the fight, because sometimes can be very dark, and what we need is hope and love.
We do need hope, and some would argue we also need urgency. So do you think that connection between head and heart helps to drive solutions and actions faster? Because we need a lot of people on board to have the changes we're looking for.
Completely. I think in this movie, I show all this plastic in the ocean, and when I see the people watching the film, they're really shocked to see all this plastic, and they're asking me, "Oh, did you find all this plastic in the ocean?" No, it's a set, don't worry, we put it out. But it has a really strong impact. And then when you have this impact, this is where you're really open to have an action, a real action.
Can artists perhaps collaborate with governments and collaborate with organizations? It sounds like it's an informational tool. Have you been able to do that collaboration yourself, or how do you see that collaboration working that allows us to engage more people faster into taking the sort of action that we need at the scale that we need?
It's exactly the step I made with this movie. So it was produced by Imagine 2050, who is a production company that made only ecological content. And it was used by Zero Waste, by On est prêt, that used the film for a big global impact actions. So the movie is just here to say, hey, hello, look, come, even you that are not completely aware about plastic pollution or whatever, we try with art to take more people that are not already, because I think all of us here, we know, and what we need, the people we need to touch is the people that are not aware yet. And I think with art, it's another step, another way to see things, and maybe we can bring more people to the fight.
I love what you say, because I think we're in a bubble, right? We're kind of in our own little bubble here, where when you're around people who are doing this work all the time, it's easy to think everybody knows.
Yeah.
Everybody knows there's a problem. Everybody knows and understands the extent of the problem. Everybody understands the limitations of recycling. It's easy to, because everybody around you understands it because you're in that world. So it's really easy to forget there are a lot of people who are less conscious in their actions because it's not their world. And I love what you're saying about art being, creating that ability to create that connection. How would you love to see other artists engage with solution providers or scientists or other people who are doing the fight for climate change, such that they can be producing artwork like you are that helps to draw more people towards wanting to make a difference and wanting to save our planet?
I'd love that.
But how would you like to see other artists doing it? Because I don't see very many at the moment.
No, there are many actually engaged artists. The more we do, the more it's going to give the idea to the makers, to the person that have actions, to the politics, to foundation, to all these people that are actually making things, but that have a little struggle to make like beautiful content that, it's not full of fear or darkness or too much number. I'm sorry, but I hate numbers. And most of the time in these big events, we have a lot of
data.
It's a lot of data and stuff. And at some point we need to sit and we need to witness the beauty so we can just engage ourselves, and we can also see light. Yeah. We need to see light, because if we don't see light at the end of the tunnel, we won't go.
Such a beautiful reminder. Is there if you were to leave us with just one thought at the end of this conversation for us to take out of this space with us, because I think it's probably awakened a few people who haven't been thinking about the possibility of engaging with artists to get a message across, what one message would you like to leave us with?
For me, not for me, it used to be for everyone, water is life. Okay, no life, no water, no life. But life is also movement. So at some point, when you see only darkness, you have to move and step aside, and you see light, and you have another point of view, and you just, to experience the beauty and the vastness, I don't know, the big picture.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Julia Gautier. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm going to say hi to you over here at the moment. So that was Julia, and it was a really good opening insight and a very different perspective to have on thinking about plastic-free solutions. Next, we're going to jump into a panel, and this panel will look at the limitations of recycling and why it's necessary for us to start thinking about banning single-use plastics. We'll also explore alternative solutions. What else is out there? A few case studies as well for us to have a look at. So our panelists for this session are the founder and CEO of CIRT, Katherine Shayne, the co-founder and co-CEO of Notpla, Pierre Paslier, and the head of advocacy at Zero Waste France, Charlotte Soulary. Please join me here on stage. Okay, I'm doing a chair swap, so that now you guys have the beauty of my face. That's what I'm saying. It's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what each of you do for those in the audience who perhaps have not come across your initiatives before. We'll start with you first, Pierre. Can you tell us a little bit more about Notpla, what it does, how it came to exist, just so we all have a common background?
Sure. So we're a UK-based company, and we develop alternatives to single-use plastics using seaweed. We saw a little bit of seaweed on the movie, and we think that actually turning to natural materials has a lot of potential for getting out of plastic. So we've developed a range of different solutions, targeting on those types of plastics that are used on the go, left kind of like without any residual value, and often create the bulk of the pollution. And some of our packaging is even edible, so we really use the most natural solution that there is. Seaweed, if you don't know, it grows some species up to 1 meter per day. It's one of the fastest growing organisms on the planet. And we use the natural binders, the glue that holds seaweed together, to create a range of different solutions, from takeaway food containers, cutlery, flexible films, so that we can stop using plastic in those places.
Fantastic. I'm going to come back to you more about why seaweed and the scale of the operation, but it's 100% no plastic. It's all natural okay. I'm loving it. Part of me is kind of like, and I love the idea that you can eat some of it. If you haven't checked out Notpla's stuff before, you really should. It's quite exciting. Kat, can you tell us a little bit more about the work that you do at CIRT?
Yeah, happy to be here. And so at CIRT, we are an award-winning, female-founded company that is building software and data tools for the circular economy. So what we do is, through geospatial and AI, we actually map waste infrastructure and help companies transition from materials that are problematic, materials that are unnecessary, to materials that are regenerative, that are better for you, that are better for the planet, materials like Notpla, that materials like they're building, and others that are going to help restore the planet. And so before I started CIRT, I actually was studying plastic pollution. So I was working with communities around the world, with informal waste sector communities, was in the rivers that were full of plastic, understanding how we were to mitigate plastic pollution. And so I'm really, really passionate about this topic and excited to be here to chat about it.
Thank you so much. So helping companies make better decisions around the packaging that they have. Charlotte, can you tell us a bit about the work that you're doing towards zero waste at Zero Waste?
Yeah, on my side, I'm helping decision makers make better decisions. So we are a French environmental organization, part of a global movement called Break Free from Plastic. We basically advocate and mobilize for waste reduction at the source, which means that ensure waste doesn't even exist, is not even produced in the first place, which means we advocate for alternatives to single-use products, alternatives to waste products, because when they are produced, very often they don't stay long at the state of product there, they become waste. We also warn against false solutions, such as so-called chemical recovery of plastic, for example, or many other solutions that are not solution for free a world free from plastic.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing that. Before we dive into eradicating plastic altogether, when I grew up, right, we were told reduce, reuse, recycle. That was the mandate. Reduce the use of plastic, reuse where you can, recycle. Now we seem to be shifting to don't use it at all. Like, let's just eradicate plastic altogether. Why the shift? Is our previous reduce, reuse, recycle no longer a good foundation for us to move to? Why do we have to have such a radical change, Kat?
Yeah, so collection and reduction alone, it's not going to solve this problem. We can't just collect our way, reduce our way, recycle our way out of this. We are going to have to find solutions that redesign the materials that we use, that redesign the sharing economy, that redesign how we utilize our products and our packaging that phase plastic out of the system, especially when it comes to consumer products, when it comes to packaging, and the way our consumption operates. So we're going to have to figure out those systems, from that systemic lens, that holistic lens. I mean, when plastic was produced, it was to replace ivory at first, right? And then when the plastic bag was patented, it was to replace paper bags because we didn't want to cut down trees. So when we look at the system, we have to think about it holistically, systemically, but we're going to have to start to phase plastic out of those systems.
Charlotte, would you agree with that?
Yeah, we just have to do that very fast. And the difficulty that the very simple fact that plastics pollutes at every stage of its life cycle is not a fact that everyone agrees on it. We have to fight a lot. I know there are a lot of investors here at ChangeNOW, so I have one message for them. When you hear plastic circularity, please run away. Unfortunately, plastic circularity is now the keyword for the solutions some producers, and in particular the fossil fuel industry, is happy to promote. It's just not even possible to think about it and agree. I mean, we know that from extraction to production and then to the waste treatment, we have a lot of pollution. So to find another way, we just have to think about what worked before plastic even existed. I'm often thinking about this drink company who one day decided to put all its glass bottles into plastics and do it everywhere in the world. Now this company is getting in the way of a true solution. So for me, well, the only way we think we can reasonably do this is by thanks to the law. Very easy, very simple, the law. A law that forbids some products, a law that put a cap on production at the global level, and that's all. And thanks to a cap on production and some taxes, for example, on plastic polymers, we can change the market. We can ensure that this happens sooner than later.
Yeah. So we've got pollution throughout the whole production cycle, and I suppose the circular economy is almost recycling on steroids, and that's not really the answer. Pierre, from your perspective, as a solution provider who's got a solution that's got zero plastic in it, is there demand? You know, are companies genuinely stepping forward now, looking for solutions that have no plastic at all?
So I think they are. Like, we're here in ChangeNOW, it's like thousands of people who are really engaged with the topics. I think the problem is that we still don't have a lot of transparency. Mm-hmm. And greenwashing is still relatively kind of like not creating enough kind of like incentive. Like, people get away with it too easily. And there's a lot of kind of like bold marketeers who will claim plastic-free, plant-based, all sorts of different things, when actually the reality is that it's not quite the whole deal. And if we are transparent about what we create, a transition solution is a transition solution. It's okay that we don't have everything like solved right now, but that doesn't create the right incentive for the people who create the actual plastic-free solutions to differentiate themselves from what we're seeing. And so I totally agree with like the role of legislation to create a more kind of like even playing field. For us, one key kind of like moment was the introduction of a tax on single-use plastics for food service in the Netherlands. And basically that forced the government, for the first time any government, to go and check what is on the market containing plastic and what doesn't contain plastic. So they had to create a task force of chemists and engineers to go and check all those materials that were kind of like on the market, and lots of them claiming to be plastic-free. And after a rigorous 9 months effort to really test and understand the process of all of the different solutions that were on the market, they unfortunately came to the conclusion that apart from Notpla, every single solution that was claiming to be plastic-free actually contained plastic. This is the state we are in today. All those solutions, they were convincing their clients that they were doing the right thing. They were selling this idea that they were already completely plastic-free. So unless we have this clear distinction where we create the right incentive for those innovations, we're not going to have the right level of investment and the right level of drive for actually creating the solutions of tomorrow.
That is shocking. So government puts a task force together to go out and validate the validity of claims, to discover that of all the companies claiming to be plastic-free, literally only one of them makes the grade. That is absolutely insane. So on the topic of greenwashing, to what extent is this intentional? Kat, I'm sure in your line of business, working with companies, how easy is it, because it's an ongoing conversation, individuals want companies to be transparent. If you say it's 0% plastic, we want to know, the public wants to know, that's what it is. From an organizational perspective, how easy is it to verify your complete supply chain to ensure that you're not inadvertently saying the wrong thing and then getting caught out in scenarios like this? It must be incredibly embarrassing. Kat, what do you see that like for organizations?
Yeah, so, in Europe, right, there's much more regulation around supply chain regulation, materials regulation, carbon accounting, there's carbon pricing. And so I think when you look at something like plastics and regulating plastics, coupling it with something like carbon accounting could be very powerful. And looking at the US, states like California, like Washington, Oregon, Maine are setting the stage for regulation. And so multinational corporations have to apply, or be compliant across not only state boundaries, but also country boundaries. And so they're trying to be compliant everywhere, and that's really difficult. And so when they're looking at their supply chains, they want to implement something that's going to be easiest across their entire corporate organization, right? And so they have to test regionally. So when they're testing in somewhere like the EU, they want to test initially with a pilot. But we see that when they're testing with pilots, we encourage them to test at scale, right? Don't just test somewhere and say, oh, look at us, we're doing the right thing here. Test for scale. Test somewhere and know that what you're testing in one region, you can actually scale across multiple areas, multiple regions. And so that's what we encourage companies to do, and we help them track that. We help them improve their products, improve their packaging at scale. And so unlocking capital is really important in this space as well. So when we're, for the investors in this space, it's a chicken and the egg problem. Companies rely on the contracts from large organizations to be able to scale their products. But that can't happen without the capital to scale their products, right? And so without the market share being equal, that capital has to be there. So I encourage that the investors in this space, put the capital into these products, because we have to get there. We have to have these solutions in the marketplace to get to a plastic-free environment. And without them, the companies will not adopt these solutions if they're not at fair market prices. So scale is really important in this space, and getting to a fair market value is really important as well.
I'm seeing a lot of complexities, but what I've extracted from what you've said are a few things. Firstly, as large organizations looking to avoid greenwashing, doing micro tests and then expecting that that's going to scale up is probably not the most sensible approach. So do those tests with scale in mind, but also understand that we do have this chicken and egg situation where we need the scale, and we'll talk about that in detail. Like, where do you find these? How practical is it to find companies that can work with the largest plastic polluters to replace it? Because it's a lot of products that they're putting out to market and do it in a cost-effective way. Charlotte, in terms of transparency, how do we push to get more transparency in this space to avoid greenwashing? Because that's not what, consumers want to know we're getting what's on the package.
Yeah, people want to know, but it's better if the most polluting materials don't even exist. It makes me think a lot about polyester in the fashion industry. There is this durability index being developed at the both French and EU level, and in the first, at first, the methodology say that polyester, and just to remind people, polyester is plastics, it is fossil fuel, and it is 60% of our fashion, our products. We all wear polyester at the moment, and it is one of the main responsible materials for microplastics in the ocean, etc. So it is very durable. It's so durable that it stays in the ocean, it stays in the skin, it stays everywhere. We have to get rid of it. So, of course, when there is a durability index, the way it is calculated, polyester has a very good score. So we had polyester fashion products with a better score than other, durable products. And this is mainly because the complexity of the calculation first, but also the place of the industry, the lobbying of the industry when we make the law, when we make the methodology. And we had this issue, so we are following very closely the negotiations for a global plastic treaty. It's like an historic opportunity for real change, but in these negotiations, we see how many lobbyists are in the room, how many lobbyists are trying to do what they could to avoid good legislation at the global level. And we've seen that in France. Each time there is a law and a decree and a negotiation on the decree, you have the lobbyists in the room and they get exemptions, they get derogations, they get a longer term to avoid to very easily, just to avoid to change their business model. At the moment in France with the fast fashion law that is being discussed, one of the ultra fast fashion companies is doing its best to avoid the law to pass. So for me, this is also, the issue of transparency is really that, is how you put the lobbyists outside of the room when the decision is made.
I mean, that's a very difficult question to wrap around, but I think it's something we do need to start thinking about a lot more. Where are we putting the weight and where are we making the exceptions? We've touched on, Pierre, scale, and we've touched on transparency. How is Notpla meeting both of these? How can I as a consumer know that this is a Notpla container that I've got in front of me? And how are you gearing up to scale such that large organizations are able to actually be able to tap into a solution like yours?
I think it's the big challenge of all the innovators, the material innovators, to find those partners, those champions that are going to give you this chance of scaling up. Just a couple of weeks ago, we announced a big partnership with Compass Group.
Congratulations.
They use hundreds of millions of those takeaway food containers coated with plastic. To get one organization like this to partner up takes months, years. But once you have that kind of buying power, it means that it opens doors to the co-manufacturers to actually make the effort of making their machines work not with plastic, but with seaweed, to change the supply chain to have the right kind of transformations that are needed, to bring the cost down. So I think what's happened really well in the energy industry to bring the cost of green energy down and down to the point that today green energy is cheaper than coal energy. We need the same thing for plastics. We need big offtake agreements that don't take years to negotiate. We need the commercial partners to really be a bit more visionary and make these tangible signs that there is uptake, because otherwise investors will not write the check and will never be able to scale out of the lab. For us, we've been working on this for almost 10 years. It's a pity that it takes 10 years to get to replacing, now the counter is 7 million single-use plastics. But 7 million single-use plastics is actually a very small number. We need billions. And so we don't have another decade. So really, I think everyone in the room has a role to play, whether they are like representing brands or innovators or like governments or investors. We need to make this transition faster.
10 years to get to be able to make a transformation of 7 million plastics. That is insane. If we think about how much plastic individually, even when you're conscious, individually how much plastic is unavoidable for us to use, 10 years for a supplier to land such an incredible contract is insane in my mind. Go on, Kat, and then we'll talk about some regulations and how we might be able to change that.
Yeah, I was actually reading a stat. So Dr. Jenna Jambeck, who's my co-founder, recently published a book called Plastics with the MIT Press, and I encourage everyone to go check it out. It's a great read. It's easy. You'll get really informed about plastics once you read it. But it was something like in Denmark, they consume like 1 to 4 plastic bags a year. And in the US, we consume anywhere between 1 and 500 plastic bags a year. And so if you multiply that by all the people that we have in the US, it's a lot of plastic bags, right? And so bioplastics only make up less than 1% of the plastics market, less than 1%. And so if we really want to make a dent, we have to fuel that space, right? We have to put a lot of investment in that space to see it explode. And we have to, if we want to make a dent and we want to see plastics scale down, fossil fuel-based plastics scale down. So yeah, congratulations. That's awesome.
What I'm hearing is we need big radical change, and sometimes the only way towards big radical change is regulation and legislation. Charlotte, what do you think would be the single most impactful registration or regulatory shift that we could have that would help to seriously move the needle on plastics?
First, the experience of France 4 years ago with the anti-waste law. Many companies were actually created thanks to this law because it helped them prove and find investors to prove that we can move away from the single-use packaging industry, for example, to promote reuse, etc. So we need that at the global level now. There is, I've thought about it, there is this global the negotiation for a global treaty against plastic pollution, and UN member states have one choice to make. It is about the definition of how we move away from plastic pollution. Do we believe in plastic circularity, all these false solutions? Do we think we can still use single-use products in packaging industry, for example? Or do we think we can reduce the production of plastic? I think there is a majority of countries at the moment who are in favor of it. There is a high ambition coalition in favor of that. The EU is fighting for that. But on the other side, there are the oil and plastic producers who don't want to reduce the production. So it is really what is at stake in the coming months. Hopefully by the end of the year, we will have a cap, global cap on production, and we need that. After the global cap, we need a global tax, a global plastic tax. As Pierre said, the alternatives to plastic have to be cheaper. And to do that, plastics products must include the environmental cost of their products. So this is what is at stake with a global plastic tax. We can also do that at the French level. I would like us to do that as well as the French level without waiting. But this is among the things that can and must be decided at the global level as well.
Maybe just to add on this, I totally agree with you. Like, we are not paying the true cost of plastic today. Like, independent studies show that like the real cost of plastic on society in the Western world is about 20 times the market price. In the global South, it's about 200 times the market price. So we're basically just paying a deposit on plastic and leaving the rest to be paid by future generations. And until we bake that into the economics, it's going to be really hard to get out of plastic.
Wow. Kat, do you have anything to add to that in terms of what we think regulation should do? Because we're pretty much there now.
Yeah, plastic taxes, I would agree. Pricing the externalities is something that's missing in a lot of spheres of climate. So I completely agree, yeah.
Thank you all so much. It's been Pierre, Kat, and Charlotte. Give them a warm round of applause. So lots and lots and lots to consider there. Our next speaker is invented an innovative magnet-based method for extracting microplastics, which we've just been hearing about, from the ocean. And he did this at age, wait for it, 18. Aged 18 is when this was created. It earned him the title of Global Prize winner at the Google Science Fair in 2019. He's a Forbes 30 under 30 listee, inventor, scientist, and changemaker, founder of Fionn & Co. and the Green Coalition. Please give a warm round of applause to my next panelist, Fionn Ferreira. Right, I think I need to grab this seat, is what I've been told. Oh. Welcome, welcome, Fionn. I am going to ask you a really rude question that men are never allowed to ask women, but I'm just going to jump in and ask you it anyway. So you invented your solution at age 18. How old are you now?
Now I'm 23, and actually, I didn't invent this at 18. At 18, I kind of showed the world I invented this, but invention is a much, much longer process. So yeah, I was working on this invention from about 15 or so, and I had a couple more before that, but now I'm 23.
23. So tell us a little bit of the story behind it. So how did you even start thinking about microplastics? I mean, I know what I was up to at age 15, and it certainly wasn't sitting down trying to invent a solution to save the world.
So I actually come from Ireland, and I grew up in West Cork. Now, if anybody has been to West Cork, I don't know if you have, it's like middle of nowhere, like 2 hours drive from the airport. You get to like the end of the houses where the sea starts, and that's where I lived. So while growing up beside the seashore, all I saw was essentially the sea, the land around the sea. On rainy days, I was indoors playing with my Legos, and on the sunny days, I was outside walking along the seashore, and like that, I actually saw a lot of the plastic pollution washing up on the shore. At the beginning, actually, I just thought, it looks bad, but it's not actually bad for the environment. These big plastic bits just wash up on the coastline, and that's about it. But over time, I learned more and more of the problems associated with it, and I saw more and more plastic physically breaking off these larger plastics, ending up in the water and in the sea, and that's something that kind of inspired me to get a little bit worried and to hopefully do something about that problem as well.
In the last panel, we talked about investment, and we talked about how important it is for innovators like you to have the funding behind you such that we can eradicate plastic, whether that's removing it or just stopping it going out in the first place. What is the difference in finding investment when you're talking to an investor at 18, 19, 20? Hi, I just invented this amazing solution. Please, can you give me millions so that I can go and transform the world? How does that conversation go at your age?
Well, first of all, that conversation is definitely not easy, and I found this actually super difficult and still find it super difficult. Basically, what I first went about was trying to scale my idea into something that was feasible. So I went from this small-scale prototype where I was removing microplastics from water. For those of you who are not familiar, it's a super simple process, really. I've engineered a liquid made from a magnetic powder and plant-based oil, and when I put that liquid into water, it binds to plastic particles, making them magnetic, so magnets can come in and pick up the plastic particles. And then if you use a very specific magnetic pulsing technique, you can then actually let it release the plastics again, and like that you can actually reuse this liquid over and over to extract microplastics from water. It's the only non-filtration based microplastic removal technology out there at the moment, and it's actually one of the most effective as well. But back to your question, what I find is quite difficult when you're quite young is that people don't really believe you. They think, oh, you know, you're a little scientist. Oh, great.
So cute.
Yeah, so cool. Gucci, Gucci, goo. Here's your idea. Maybe in 5 years' time or something like that, when you have a degree or two, you know, maybe pitch it to us again. And I think something for all the investors out here listening is maybe to think not about the track record of these scientists, because, I mean, like, they're 15, right? I was, like, 15 to 18. I didn't have a track record of other, like, businesses, because when was I supposed to do that, huh? So then I would recommend that you look at how driven they are, and how strong a team they have. Because if these are very, very driven scientists, very passionate about what they do, and they're young, they probably are still so energetic and really, really want to make that change that they'll probably push through and get there. So that's something I would say is one criterion. And the next criterion is to see who they've aligned themselves with as a team. One of the major people actually on my team, I have a company called Fionn & Co, and we actually do for-profit installations of this microplastic removal technology. We're at TRL level 3 to 4, so we've got a working prototype, and we're actually raising at the moment in a seed round, so if anybody's interested, do meet me. Also people at the back, huh? So basically this going from the stage of actually looking for investment as a young person is really quite challenging, and a lot of people don't take you seriously, which is a bit annoying.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate, and whilst I hear everything you're saying, and I agree that having a great team behind you is super important, isn't it a huge risk to an investor to throw a significant amount of money behind a young person with limited life experience?
Well, isn't it also a huge risk to throw a huge amount of money behind somebody who might not have a very innovative idea and is old?
You make a very good point. I'm just asking. I'm playing devil's advocate.
But no, I totally agree with you. I think it's definitely something that a lot of people will question, right? If giving a lot of money to young people is perhaps the right thing to do. And I think we should not be judging ideas based on the age of the founders or the people involved. We should instead look at the idea on like the normal criteria that any idea is judged on, right? So that might be like how innovative it is. Could it actually change the world? How achievable it is? Will this make money? Will this like have an impact? Like just the same criteria that you would use for any other startup, maybe excluding the track record of the founder, but of course still looking at the overall team. So I think we should not look at them differently.
I think the team is important, and you would look at the team in any event with any founder. And I love the idea that if it's impact investing that you're doing, then the impact comes from the possibility of that solution and how wide-ranging it can be. And if that's the core focus of the investment, then in theory it shouldn't be any more difficult, but in practice, clearly it is. So you've shared a little bit more about already how the solution works. What is your big vision? We're talking about eradicating plastics altogether. You're only 23. What is your big vision for where you can see our future going to as it pertains to plastic, or the lack thereof?
Well, I came up with this idea when I was like 15, 16, and really I was looking at this microplastic removal, so removing it from the environment. And while I think that's super important, I'm also very confident that it's not the solution to our problems, right? Like, I mean, like removing plastic from the environment will just maybe become an excuse for other people to put more plastic into the environment, which it should never be. So I think that what I would like to do, and that's why I actually study a master's in chemistry. My thesis is due in a month, by the way, so after this I'm going to write my thesis. But basically, I think it's super, super important that we try and eliminate or stop producing plastic in the first place, or if we do, treat it as a resource that's actually valuable, which it is. So not something that we throw away immediately, but something that we keep and value for a long time, hopefully like these chairs we're sitting on, then I think it's actually an okay resource to use. But if we're just looking at it as something that's very fleeting and quick, then I think that's a problem. But needless to say, don't be worried for my technology, because I think there's enough microplastic out there for me to be removing microplastic for the rest of my life. But it definitely won't be the only solution I want to bring to the table, and I'm inventing at the moment in the lab.
I'm going to shift it up a little bit. I know you recently spent 6 months in the North Pole, and you're constantly learning and diving deeper. Firstly, tell us, how did you come to say, you know what I'll do? I'll just take a little bit of time off, send myself off to the North Pole, and hang out there for a bit. How did that even come about, and then what were you doing whilst you were there?
Well, I guess the reason why I went to the North Pole, let's cut to chase here, is actually because I just love being outside and I love exploring the wilderness. And then I found, like, I was so determined to go that I was like, I need to find an excuse to go here. So I actually found a course at the Arctic University of Svalbard in northern Norway. So it's an island off the coast of Norway, 78, 79 degrees north, super far north. And yeah, I took the 6 connecting flights to go there. And then when I arrived, I started studying chemical oceanography. I did a semester at the university there. We did some research cruises, so we ice broke through a lot of the ocean, doing a lot of measurements while we were on the sea. And those measurements actually showed us how different pollutants travel in the sea and how different currents in the ocean are changing as well due to global warming. So one of the things that really stood out to me there was that basically all the ocean currents are changing slowly as the oceans are warming, because the ocean currents like the Gulf Stream and different ones like this are driven by deep water formation in the Arctic. So basically the cooling of water contracts and it sucks more water from down here all the way up north. And that, of course, sucks a lot of pollution up north, too. So actually, being at the North Pole, or very close to the North Pole, made me realize that, well, microplastics and in general, all the pollution we make here is so much more magnified there. Like one piece of plastic that we release here will be joined by many more up there. And it was actually perhaps one of the most polluted places I've ever been on Earth. So remember that if you throw something into the water here, it's not just in Paris where the impact is, but it's really quite a global impact.
I mean, as you're saying that, what's occurring to me is many of us will have been to those oceans where you walk along the coastline and you see plastics washed up, and we think that's bad. Now, if what you're telling me is actually the current is taking them north and you're in the south when you're seeing this, it's far worse than we're actually seeing.
Of course, I got so horrified because basically, like the snow you have there is full of plastic. Like we would go on 15-day ski trips into remote mountains, like I don't know, camping in 24-hour daylight is also a really good experience. I recommend, particularly if you have to be polar bear guard at 2 in the morning, sitting outside the tent with the rifle. But while we were even in these super remote locations, we still saw huge amounts of plastic everywhere we did a measurement. Basically, every measurement we did had plastic in it. So that kind of highlighted to me the importance of what I do, and it kind of motivated me to come back and actually do a little bit more on this field again and actually work a lot harder on these microplastic removal strategies, but also ultimately try and inspire people to stop producing plastic waste in the first place.
You said you were doing a lot of research, took a lot of data. What was the biggest insight you got?
I think one of the biggest insights is that actually the way oceans are moving and the currents are moving is changing completely. In 10 to 15 years, the way our ocean currents are going to be moving will change because the oceans are warming and changing shape, and that's all due to climate change. And that will mean that the way waste will be distributed will change too. And that will have a huge consequence on wildlife and indeed our health too. Because as this deep water formation reduces, we're going to have more and more plastic pollution not go up to the north, but instead end up on the shores here. And I think that that's something that we should all be very, very worried about, because we don't want this area looking like what it looked like for me up there.
You said you've got lots of new inventions, lots of new ideas. You're now more invigorated than ever, having come back from the North Pole. How do you think we should be thinking about what are your thoughts on how we should be viewing the use of plastic going forward? Because it's really easy for us to sometimes, because we're removed from it, we're living our day-to-day lives, we're in it when we're at an event like this because we're hearing a lot about it and it's right at the forefront of our minds. But unless you're walking along an ocean and it's washing up all the time, or you're in the depths of research, it's really difficult for us to remain connected. How can we think about this problem differently as individuals, as politicians, as researchers, as inventors? What's the mindset shift you want to see us have?
Well, I think that what we should first look at is, well, what we actually need plastic for. Where is it really essential for what we do? Because I think actually if we come into a space and we say, we want to eradicate all plastics, people are so overwhelmed by the problem that they don't know where to begin, and that makes it really, really difficult for anybody to do anything about the problem. So I think one step at a time, keep it relaxed.
Okay.
Zen, we can do this. And then I think just looking at one small step at a time from an element of reducing or completely eliminating products. And if we can look at these single steps individually and tackle each one individually and slowly let them build up in block size until it gets more complex, I think that can have a big impact. Maybe from personal example, I know this is super basic, and something that I thought would be super basic at least, is that actually on my Instagram I run something called a Deplastify Challenge, where every single week I give up one plastic item from my day-to-day life. It sounds super simple, so it could be, for instance, like let's say a plastic cup or something like that, and then I keep on giving that up after that week. You can all join me, by the way. My name is my Instagram handle. And basically, it started super simple. Now it's like a plastic writing implements, which like it's so incredibly difficult to give up. So these individual products made me realize how actually difficult it is still in our current economy to give up plastic. And I think that that needs to change, that it actually is possible for people to give up plastic before we start talking and pressuring bigger, or pressuring each other to do this. As a consumer, we need to try and make it possible from a higher up perspective.
I love that challenge.
Go ahead.
I said I love that challenge. Like by the end of the year, you've given up 52 uses of plastic, and you just do it once a week, add something new onto that as a really practical solution that we can all walk away with.
Yeah, so are you joining me in this challenge?
You've just put me on the spot. Am I joining him in this challenge? I am now, huh? Okay. All right, 52 days. I'm going to have to... I've been chipping away at it, but I don't think I've been going at that pace. And that sounds bad, doesn't it? 1 a week, so 52 items in a year sounds like pace to me. It's occurring to me that doesn't sound great. We really should be moving a lot faster than that. And I think that's one of those things that we need to keep at the top of our mind.
You know, like this week is super simple. For me, it was the plastic cup, actually. Weirdly, it was only this week that I got around to doing the plastic cup. And it was actually great because on the train here, I was offered a glass of wine in the train. I was like, no, I can't do a plastic cup. And they gave me the whole bottle. So, you know, like this kind of
sometimes it works out.
Yes.
So that's on an individual level. What would you say to business owners and organizations? What little step could they be taking towards plastic-free?
Well, I think merely giving people the option to choose something plastic-free and perhaps making that a little bit cheaper would be perhaps the best step that you could take. I think so many cases it's almost like we're being forced to take a plastic product. And that's something I think that has to change. But I know that it's also not up to the business, right? I think it has to come from higher up. I think Pierre already mentioned a really interesting policy in the Netherlands. I live in the Netherlands, by the way, and there they have this policy about paying for plastic packaging, that you're paying almost a charge for the plastic that's used in packaging. And in my opinion, it's actually not working particularly well, because it's not being shown to us that that this charge is being added in very much ways, and it's too cheap. So I think that perhaps we just need to make it a little bit more expensive. Like if I have to pay €5 for the plastic packaging of my chocolate bar, maybe that'll have a bigger impact than those, I don't know, 5 cents that I now have to pay. So I think trying to incentivize people to consciously choose not to take plastic is the only way we can go forward, and that I think money is perhaps a very, very good way to do that.
So I think that'll get some business owners sort of thinking, like, where am I making it really easy for people to pick plastic, and what could I be doing differently that would make a non-plastic alternative a better solution? What would be your message to investors as it pertains to little steps they could take to help put the funding behind, because it's a big problem, and the big problem, as we spoke about in the previous panel, we need money behind some of these solutions. What would be your word of advice to investors, or your thought and little thing that they could do that would help to move the needle forward?
Well, I think one thing is to not undervalue youth-led ideas and youth-led projects. I think young people have this incredible ability of being able to play with ideas, right? And they might not have been tunnel vision trained into this one field quite yet. So as a result, they make often unconventional connections between completely different fields, right? I was looking at magnetism liquids with plastics in like the middle of nowhere in Ireland in my garden shed, inventing and then bringing it to a global stage. I think that meant that my idea was relatively unique, and it allowed me to file patents, etc., on this technology. And I think so many youth-led startups have this capability of being just so incredibly creative. So perhaps looking at the unconventional places to find ideas and not being scared to back even crazy ideas, I think that's the best advice I can give.
I'm also going to ask you for a small piece of advice for legislators, governments. You know, sometimes we need external forces to just channel us down the right path. Left to our own devices, we are not going to make great choices. So what little change would you like to see policymakers starting to have that will start to get us all together on a path that looks at plastic really differently?
Well, as a policymaker, I would first like to say to you guys, to policymakers, I'm not a policymaker, to policymakers, I would like to say that stop blaming the scientists. So many policymakers like to blame the scientists that the technology is not there yet, and I would like to disagree with that because the technology is there. We have a lot of solutions that are in play. Look, we have Notpla, we have so many incredible solutions which are tackling the plastic problem. They might be a little bit more expensive, but if we give them more support and if we use them more, they will become cheaper. So don't use technology readiness as an excuse. Instead, I think perhaps actually like pulling the socks up and actually doing something about the plastic waste problem and not being afraid that it might be a little bit expensive at first is something. And then the other thing is, of course, well, what are you waiting for in getting youth involved? Young people, I think, are the people who will have to cope with this plastic problem for the longest out of everybody. So therefore, I think they need to be involved from a very, very early stage. I think that's something that a lot of people are hesitant to do because I think some youth movements have a name for themselves in disagreeing with everything, but I think that that's perhaps just because things were not done correctly or because they haven't been given enough voice or power. So I think that incorporating youth voices might be a really good idea in the long run.
Speaking of youth voices, last question for you. If you were a mentor to a young inventor or scientist, what unconventional piece of advice might you give them based on your own personal experience?
I think what I would say is actually forget the outcome of what you're doing. Like, don't go in somewhere with a goal in mind. If you feel like you want to solve the plastic problem, just forget that and instead see like what you actually enjoy doing. Because the invention process, only 1% of the invention process time is actually when you have a working invention. The rest of that time, you're probably doing stuff that doesn't work or doesn't work out, or some people might even call it fail. So what you need to do is realize what you enjoy and do that. For me, that's like playing with little wires, soldering, like getting out my Lego box. Literally, I do this every day. I love this. And it's because the innovation process is really, really slow. That's where you're going to be spending most time on. So discover what you enjoy most in that process and focus on that, not the outcome, because the outcome is only one happy day and then you're back in the innovation studio.
Fantastic. Fionn, thank you so much for joining us. Please give him a warm round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is amazing.
That concludes this session. My name's been Lovelda Vincenzi. You've been listening to the session on plastic-free initiatives. This is day one of Change Now. There are lots of amazing topics for you to dive into throughout the course of the next few days. I'll be back later, not on this stage. I'm on the Eiffel stage at 2:30, I think it is, this afternoon, if you want to come and catch me then. Have a fabulous rest of your day, and thank you so much for joining us. Take care.